Hi everyone, my name is Cody here at the Thomasville Public Library, and we're coming with you today to do our first of our two poetry classes that we're going to be offering. And today the first type we're going to be talking about is haiku. Haiku originated in Japan around the 13th century. They are very straightforward, very short. They are 17 syllables divided into 3 lines. The lines are very strictly 5 syllables, then 7 syllables, and then 5 more syllables. Pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry. Some traditional features that you will see in haiku are taking something from the natural world and extrapolating that out into seeing something much deeper about humanity or the world itself or nature. They're typically a snapshot in time, one moment kind of captured in these 17 syllables. They usually have very vibrant sensory details, whether that's something that you see very clearly or smell or feel or even hear. They typically tend to leave a strong impression on the reader, and sometimes they have reference to the season. Now, as haiku has kind of evolved and developed, some people have become a little bit more liberal with the rules and changing things around, but traditionally, like I said, it's the 5-7-5. Here are a couple of examples that I wrote for us to look at today. So the first one, the ocean surface whispers fortunes to the sky. Starlight dances there. The lynx in the frost prowls through morning light so clear, the day knows no end. Now this one, you can notice it is a brief snapshot in time. It's just an image of a lynx prowling through the frost. The day knows no end. It gives you a sort of sense of the larger world, that a moment in time is in fact its own kind of world. And then in all of these, you can see these pink words. This is a kairji, which is a Japanese word that is very hard to translate into English, but basically it's a cutting word. The best way to think of it is like verbal punctuation. So each time you see one of these pink kairji words, it's where you pause. Whispers fortunes to the sky, period. Starlight dances there. Prowls through morning light so clear, comma, the day knows no end. So listen for that in these last two. Summer light tattoos honeysuckle memories, ink that rarely fades. And let's count the syllables in this last one. Desolation waits, heard in the heart-spun whisper of autumn's last breath. So you can see each one is 5-7-5, and I've also incorporated this kairji, this kind of verbal punctuation into each one. So that's a little bit about haiku. They are a very accessible form of poetry if you're just getting into it. Some people like rules, some people like having some strict guidelines to follow, as that tends to help them out a little bit more. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is blackout poetry. This is super interesting because one of the hardest things for most writers is starting with the blank page and not knowing what to put on the page. Well, with this, you start with a full page and just take out everything you don't need. I have a book here. We got it from one of our sister libraries here in North Carolina. It's called Newspaper Blackout by Austin Kleon. And in it, you can see that he just took the New York Times and just made poetry from what he saw on the page. So let's read one of these and see what we've got going on here. Okay, here's a good one. Mozart smoothed over any possible offenses. With music so beautiful, they seemed less sure what to do when he slipped in wicked energy one would expect of any 14-year-old. That's really cool. I like that. But the way that you do this is pretty straightforward. You're going to start with finding an expendable page. So a discarded book, for instance, maybe one that's gotten some water damage. You can use a newspaper like Mr. Kleon did. You can find a magazine, print something out from the internet. You're going to lightly underline any words that jump out to you. This is a form of free verse poetry, which we're going to talk about in our next video. But in that, we're going to talk about imagery and vibrant words, things that convey meaning and emotion. Look for those words and lightly underline any that jump out to you. And then look for connecting or thematic words. Words that are going to kind of pull those words together into something that has meaning. Likely box in the words with a pencil whenever you're satisfied with the poem you have, and then black out the extraneous words, erasing the pencil lines as you go. That's pretty much all there is to it. There are 4 basic styles that we'll run through, just to kind of give you an example of each one. The most basic one is the redacted style. That's what I showed you in Mr. Cleon's book, and that's also what you can see here. This is a poem I had published in college, and I just took a page of a book, found the words I wanted, and took a Sharpie and blacked out the rest of them. So the next style is called bubble style. By the way, I made all of these terms up. There are no official sort of demarcations for this. But with bubble style, you find the words that you want, you just give them a circle. Box them in, put them in a little bubble. For the first type of bubble style, in the background, I just did patterns. So this one's very loopy. And then this one has a lot of like splits in it, because the theme of the poem is splitting apart. The second type of bubble style is drawn or illustrated. So here I took and I bubbled the words, found out what the words were saying, which in this poem is talking about storms and not being afraid of the stormy moments in life and the bad weather, because there's going to be worry for tomorrow. So just worry about today while it's here. And since it had all this ship imagery and kind of storms, I drew a ship and a storm. The next style is abstract style, where you just find your words and you just do something kind of abstract. There are no real rules here, just kind of however you want to do it. So for this top part, this is sort of a kind of dark, depressed feeling, so I did these very dark, heavy marks. This one's more hopeful, it's leading somewhere. So I made sure it was very bright and all leading to the bottom point. And then one of the more all over the page types is connect the dots. So with this one, your words don't have to be in a straight line. So like with this one, it goes all the way down here, back up, back down, all around, in a maze-like pattern. Again, there are really no rules. You're only limited by your imagination here. So I'm going to actually show you what the process looks like whenever you're doing this. Here are 2 pages I started with. I grabbed these from the book, The Hurricane, which I got off of our book sale list here for 50 cents. And I just cut the pages out and started that way. So here are the pages I started with. I made 2 photocopies of each page so that I had a little extra to work with in case I made a mistake. I underlined the words that jumped out to me. Huddled in his chair, desolation, warm heart. These very vibrant words that meant something to me, that caused me to have a reaction to them. So what I was looking for was strong images, strong feelings, and verbs. I did that again here on the right side and jotted down kind of what it made me think about: storms, sea, a ship. From there, I looked for connecting words that kind of put the words that jumped out to me at first together. So I lightly bubbled them in. I'm not sure if you can see that here on the screen, but I lightly circled them with pencils over there as well. And then I made some notes over here. So I divided this poem into 2. The top part, like I said earlier, was a little bit more dark and betrayed, volatile, whereas the bottom side was more hopeful. It was leading somewhere. Both of them kind of had the theme of heartbreak and hurt, so I thought it might work well as 2 poems contrasting together. And then there's the finished product. We saw those earlier, but you can see them again here. Kind of the step from beginning page all the way to finished product. And if you are a visual person, we'll go through what it actually looked like to do it. First, here are the materials I used: the discarded book. I used a safety box cutter. Now do be careful if you're using one of these. A piece of scrap paper, I just put that under my hand so that whenever I was working I didn't have a lot of ink smudges or anything like that. Ruler, a pencil, pen tip and regular tip Sharpie, and an ink pen. And then here's a rather expedited version of how this went. So you can see me finding the words, brainstorming, bubbling them out, then going back with the marker after I had done the pencil. kind of making the shapes that I wanted to make. Using that scrap piece of paper there, you can see, to keep from having a lot of ink smudges or anything like that. And there's the finished product. So it's really not super hard. It can be tricky, but most of all it's just fun. It's something to do when you're bored or whenever you're feeling artistic. You don't have to have a whole lot of artistic prowess to do it. It can be as simple as just doing lines with a ruler, or as complex as, drawing a ship. Whatever you want to do. Now all this is to say, we do have our Chair City Poetry Contest coming up. You can submit either 2 haiku poems or 1 free verse poem. If you like the Blackout style, that certainly does qualify as free verse, so feel free to send us one of those. But you'll just submit at tinyurl.com/chaircitypoetry and just make sure to get those to us before April 30th. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call here at the library, 336-474-2690, or come by and see us. Thanks.